enjoy the view when you're up in the plane. Enjoy the view, go slow, but when you hit the ground, don't stay there long. Get ready. Just get ready. Get ready for all the arc shots you ever did want. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, welcome for the first time. We are so glad to have you here. Get ready for tons of arc shots. We got big gaps to fill, little gaps to fill, good fits to weld up. We got welds on a 45. And I'm also going to be sharing with you the most important thing, in my opinion, that you should focus on to help you find more work and stay more busy if you're just now starting a welding business or just wanting to keep your welding truck a little more busy on the side. And for those of you that are new around here, check out our website, arosswelding.com. And if you have any questions about anything that you see my wife and I doing here online or on YouTube, you can text those questions to 405-643-7176 and her or I will get back to you as soon as we can. All right, first things first, I'm gonna put a square up inside each one of these, just kind of real quick like, to make sure that they're all pretty close. None of them are off real bad. And they're all pretty close except for this one here. So before I tack it off, I'm gonna put a tack on that side, cut this tack, get it back right, and then go ahead and I'm actually gonna put a tack on every single one of these, a couple tacks on each one before I start welding anything. That's just a common practice that I do on any fabrication project, just to make sure that it stays square. That's like it's a common practice habit that I learned early on in my welding career. So I've been thinking a lot lately about a common question I've been getting. How do I find more welding work? And I'm assuming it's from those of you that are just now getting into the welding industry, or maybe you've been in the welding industry for a little bit, or you've got welding experience, but you're just wanting to take your, I guess you could call it welding business to the next level and make it more of a business. So all that to say is you need more work. You're just not getting into it, you want to do it, you want to have your own business, or you want to stay more busy with your truck and welder. And I hardly ever talk about the business side of things because, for one, I'm still learning. But for two, everybody's situation is different, so it's hard to, like, you know, say, hey, do this and you'll get more work. So therefore, like I said, I don't talk about it very often, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and the main thing that that I would recommend to anyone just getting started or wanting to drum up more work is to not focus on so much getting more work, but I would recommend focusing on getting more experience. Do work for yourself, like a lot of your own projects, for family. Do work for like a cheaper rate. That's another reason I don't talk about the business side of things much, because I don't ever want to encourage people to do work for too cheap, because I believe that, like, you know, welding is a skill, and the more serious that you take your welding in general and your welding skill, and the more serious you take your business, you absolutely need to charge for that. But I think it needs to be earned. You know, you need to earn trust from your customers, so therefore you need experience. So all this to say is, don't focus on getting more work. Don't focus on or well, you can focus on getting more work, but like, don't focus on making all the money in the world. Don't focus on making money. Focus on getting experience. Put all your focus on getting experience. So just be out welding, burning rod like we're doing right now, every day, for instance, or, you know, be setting posts if you're going to do fence, or be practicing your fabrication skills, laying out, cutting, drawing. Like, just be practicing something every single day. As long as you're doing something, you're gaining credibility. So don't worry about how much to charge when starting out. Don't worry about making sure you're charging enough, all that mess. Just focus on getting experience, because the more that you're doing something and the more experience you're getting, the better quality of work that you're going to be doing, especially if you're striving to get better every time you're doing something. Your customers or friends and family, people are going to see that, and then over time the price will follow your experience. Don't focus on the money, focus on getting experience. Do that for essentially your whole career. The money will follow. So I'm welding with 332 7018, and you can see that I'm filling a little gap right now, so chances are I will go back over this with like a cap pass, just so it like looks better. Technically, just filling this gap with 7018, this sucker right here would hold for ages, you know. And especially for what I'm using this for, it doesn't have to be, I don't have to have the cap pass, but for one, it'll look better if they all have cap passes on them, so it all looks more consistent. Those of you that have followed me, you know that I like to do that on my fence for customers. Again, just for consistency reasons. It makes everything look, makes all the welds look consistent, and I like consistent, you know. And this is kind of tricky because right here we're fixing to start going downhill, so really I need to jump down here and start welding uphill. Again, for those of you that may be new to the welding industry, 7018 is only an uphill rod, or a flat. You know, welding flat or uphill. Downhill is kind of a no-no with this particular 7018. They actually make a 7018, a downhill 7018, but this is not that rod. So jump down here. Let's actually jump to the other side here and make a couple welds down here on the bottom of this run, also on the top here. Anyway, it's just a good practice to practice running uphill with 7018. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to weld everything I can, as far as what I can reach overhead and all, or if I'm going to weld all the easiest thing, kind of, not necessarily the quickest, but the most enjoyable, I guess, is the way I like to put it. Most enjoyable thing to do is weld what you can most comfortably and less difficult. In other words, what we're doing now versus like an overhead weld. Overhead weld is going to be more difficult. So all that to say is weld all the flats and, you know, kind of what's toward me right now, and then take my A-frame and roll this thing to where I can make like these welds, for instance, that are overhead right now, make them right here. So that would be the most enjoyable, and that's probably what I'll do. But there is also, this is another thing with experience, is if you're just now starting out and you're building something like this, and say you want a pipeline weld, for instance, or do any type of like field pipe welding. It doesn't have to be pipeline. I mean, there's tons of pipe work that's not pipeline work, you know, that you may have to weld in position. Welding something like this in position without tipping it over or anything is actually good practice. So no matter how I go about this, it's all good experience. As long as you're doing, you're learning. I mean, even by watching this video, you're learning, but I can guarantee you're going to learn more by stepping outside to your weld machine and putting stinger in your hand and whatnot. You're going to learn way more by putting your hands on something than you are watching a video. Keeping a real tight arc length, and I'm either stepping it, or like whenever I get up here, I'm just pretty much dragging it, maybe going back and forth a little bit, like back and forth, side to side, I mean like this. Right here we got a gap, as you can see, but I kind of do the same motions, but just kind of slower, I guess. I'm taking longer strokes, like see how I'm going up. I'm going up a lot further than I would with a good fit, and then I'm dragging down this left side and back up the right side. And it's obviously not like pretty, but I'm just trying to show you some tips, I guess, things that I've learned over the years. But by keeping that rod shoved in your puddle, you're letting that puddle go out and do its work, you know. So with a 332 welding rod, we filled that, I don't know, 1/4 inch gap or something, just by in that amount of time. I mean, you just seen it. I don't know how long it took, but let me brighten you back up here. Yeah. So we filled up 3 inches of gap with one welding rod just by that certain technique. Okay, now I'm up inside my pipe stand here, and I've got y'all overhead, and I'm gonna weld this other little gap, same situation, but give y'all a different vantage point there. So same situation, less of gap, so I'm not having to go as slow and step out as far. But I'm sharing the welding rod. I'm making sure some of it's over here and some of it's over here. But I'm pretty much right directly center of it. And once it's all shaky, you don't want to be shaky, but I'm trying to weld one-handed and show you what I'm doing. Going back and forth whenever I get up here on the flat, just to kind of fill that gap. Maybe do a little circle type deal. Now I'm starting to go downhill, so I'm going to stop. Here we go. Let's do a little overhead right here. Overhead with a little bit of a gap. And it's kind of tricky. This one here, it kind of looks like, well, I guess technically from this vantage point, we'd have to start in the middle and go up to actually stay welding uphill. But since it's very little, I'm just going to start on this left side and weld downhill for just, you know, like an inch. But then I'm going to take off welding uphill over here. Show you a little uphill gap fill. I really didn't mean to rhyme that, but uphill gap fill. Do a little uphill gap fill. I don't know if you noticed in a couple of the other clips, but I've been taking my finger like so. Like, see how my two fingers are right here? The only reason I'm lighting it up is just so y'all can see my fingers. But so I'm gonna start down here. But if I can ever help it, a good habit that it took me a while to break whenever I first started welding pipe was to put both my hands, pull my fingers off this welding rod and put both my hands on my stinger down here, and that way my glove wouldn't get hot. It's a hard habit to break, especially welding with this little flimsy 332 welding rod. That ain't going so hot up there. Anyway, it's a hard habit to break, but I like to practice putting both my hands on my stinger and then just bending my welding rod and pointing my welding rod whichever direction. That way my glove doesn't get hot. And sometimes you just have to practice that, is what I'm saying. That getting comfortable with doing that just takes a little time, but like you just seen today, like I've talked about, sometimes I do still put my fingers on the rod. So it's not bad to put your fingers on the rod, but you want to be able to not have to do that. That way you don't get in the habit of burning your gloves up as fast. All right, let's boogie down here and make another higher top weld. So if you notice, I'm stepping, but I'm kind of doing like a angled step. I'll show you whenever I get done welding kind of what I'm talking about. So I was kind of had my rod kind of pointed towards this pipe because this is like somewhat overhead right now. So to make sure to get less undercut up here, I was kind of pointing my rod, this is dramatic, but pointing my rod this way versus like dead center. I kind of had it more, I had my rod angle favoring this piece of pipe versus this piece of pipe, and then I would soak it into here and make sure it's there. Then I would come across and just stay over here, but not near as long. And then I would really focus my efforts and my muscles on this piece to keep my puddle soaked in this top piece, kind of like that, kind of like what I'm doing as I'm talking here. I pause, come over, pause to the right, come over to the left for a minute, pause to the right, come over to the left, pause. I pause longer over here, kind of. It's very difficult to explain, you know, what I've learned over the years just by burning this welding rod. That's why I encourage so much hood time when it comes to welding, because it's difficult to explain sometimes, but the more you do it, the more you'll understand what I'm saying, because it'll become second nature to you after you've been doing it for, it's going to take a couple of years. So you may forget this video by the time you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I hope that helps a little bit there. Let's go down here and weld these threads. Pretty much when it comes to welding with 7018 and uphill, I focus on the higher side, if that makes sense. Like here, see how I'm doing little circles, but I'm kind of like, I'm making sure I'm getting enough of that metal soaking in on the top. That way it has less of a chance to undercut. I do a circle, and I really soak it in up here, I guess, but I never really stay there really for any time, but I kind of like go a little slower when I get to the top. I do a little loop to hit the bottom, but then I go a little slower when I hit the top, just to make sure that puddle flows out. You know, give that puddle time to flow out and fill it up, but there's like a fine line there. Once it fills up, you want to keep moving, because if you let it fill up too much, it can get too hot, and that's how you cause undercut. That's one of the ways. There's another way too, but anyway. Circle, and then kind of slow down at the top. Circle, slow down at the top. Just touch and go at the bottom, but then slow down at the top. Enjoy the view when you're up in the plane. Enjoy the view, go slow, but when you hit the ground, don't stay there long. All right, so same with this situation. To the left is our upper pipe. I'm gonna pause. We're gonna go a little slower on the top. Let it soak in on the top. We don't need to worry about if it's gonna soak in on the bottom, because gravity's gonna take care of that. This one here is a pretty good fit up, so we're just making tiny side-to-side movements. And then up here I'm kind of doing a small just step movement, because it got a touch wider up there. This one here is also a pretty good fit. But it's important to note that even if you got a good fit, it's still on my mind and very much a habit for me to point my rod towards the upper side, just to keep from, or to lessen the chance of undercut on that top. Go ahead and tap the slag off of this one. This one here is just the opposite, so I'm going to angle my rod up and keep it shoved in there. That way my puddle's focused on that top, and less chance of undercut on the top, but also we're making sure we're tying in the top piece of metal to the bottom piece of metal, top piece of pipe to the bottom piece of pipe. That's the goal with any weld, is to tie both pieces to metal together. We're tying them together. So what I mean by pointed up in this situation is, instead of like straight in like this, I'm going to angle my rod down and point it up that way, and then soak it up inside this top one. But I pretty much just keep it shoved right in this crack, and just make sure I'm binding the two all the way up. All right, this is the first pass. I'm fixing to start right here and put my cap pass. I could stand to have a little more amps or heat. I always call it heat. But if you notice, the best way I know how to describe it, whenever I was just coming up that little bit of uphill part right there, is to stay level with the world with your rod. Like if you do a zigzag, stay level, keep your zigzag level with the world. Now I'm starting to go downhill, so that's kind of illegal here, but just keep your rod shoved in there and it should be clean for the most part. Tap this slag off. Now we'll go ahead and put another pass over here, and I'll do it here and then on that upper one, and then we'll take the camera around and look at it a little closer. Let's go bump her up a touch. Okay, I bumped her up 10 from 40 to 50 on my main, on my SAE 300, and I got my course current on between the 120 and 150 range. I wanted more heat just so it wouldn't bulge up as much, so my puddle stays a little flatter, which a lot of that is in my technique here, but in my timing, but the heat does help a little bit. But yeah, kind of like the same deal I was talking about earlier, is I pause on the top, but then I kind of come ahead on the bottom, but I guess really I'm just going back and forth. Started to get dirty going downhill, so I just stopped. This side looks a little different, but I'm also a little bit warmer on my heat and looks like I was moving a little bit faster. Whenever it's like low on the toes right here, your toes is the edge of your puddle right here, like on the edge pretty much. They call that the toe. Whenever your toes are kind of, how do I explain this, kind of low, and my ripples are further apart like that, that means my travel speed was a little too fast. Anyway, let's jump up here to the top and weld this top one. See how I'm kind of pointing my rod towards that upper piece of pipe? A little bit too warm, really and truly. Kinda. Warm and rusty. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a little bit rusty. I don't weld uphill pipe very often. Ever, really. As far as in my day-to-day on projects. When I say level with the world, I mean if I was treating this like a plate bevel, I would go back and forth this way. But see, if you move that out to the real world, that's not level with the world. That's hypothetically, if this was level, it should be in theory. See how it's not level? Instead, I want my zigzags to be like this. So move this motion down to here, level with the world. So with this angle of weld, you want your zigzag to be level with this piece of pipe, essentially. So on this side, it'll be just the opposite angle. Our travel speed will be at an angle this way, but our zigzag will be the same, be level with this piece of pipe, going in the same direction as this piece of pipe here. Essentially. Doesn't have to be exact all the way up, but I mean, that's just it's a little tip that sometimes helps, is what I'm saying. Kind of just do what works at the end of the day. But That's what I've always said, but because everybody welds different, everybody learns different, everybody's machine welds different. But this is just a technique that has helped me in pipeline over the years, uphill or downhill, doing this method. So I'm coming over here, coming over here. So that looks a little nicer than like this pass here. See how it's kind of just small and doesn't look that good, versus these fat welds are gonna look a little nicer. I'm gonna do that same thing to all of these welds. I'm gonna seal them all up, brush them off, and then put those type of bigger caps on every single one of these welds. And then this bad boy will be done, and I have one more to build. Not sure if I will make a video on it here on YouTube, but I will end up with 2 of these, and I'll be able to pick up all that mess that's behind me over here and set them up on these racks. So that way, whenever I get a lifting apparatus with forks, tractor, skid steer, whatever that looks like, or if I get that forklift running over there, I'll be able to just go up and pick up some pipe. I won't have to dig it off the ground, etc. So I'm super excited about these pipe racks. Thank you for joining me today. I hope these videos have been helpful. I love projects like this. I love pipe work. I love saddle and pipe. And I just love sharing what I've learned over the years with you, in hopes that it speeds the process up for you. But keep in mind that even though the internet is here and information is vastly available, to stay grounded and to not get ahead of yourself, keep in mind that, especially when it comes to welding, the best thing that you can do for yourself is just burn rod. And that's what this video is mostly about. But it's so important, is just get experience. Just be doing every day. If you haven't even started, just start. But ultimately, after you get started, don't stop. Just weld all day, every day. That could be for somebody else. If you don't have a weld machine, go work for somebody else that has a weld machine, and just focus on getting that experience. I don't care if it pays 10 bucks an hour, just go do it. Just start welding. That experience is invaluable. Nobody can take the experience from you. Once you've got it, and you can carry that on into your own business. You can carry it on to working for somebody else. You can carry it on to do your own projects. Experience is invaluable. I can't stress that enough. Thank you for watching these videos. We appreciate all your support. Go check out our website, arosswelding.com, for more helpful resources. And if you have any questions about anything that you see us doing online, you can text those questions to 405-643-7176. Hope you have an awesome weekend, and remember, learn something every day.